So hard, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying so hard to stay on my grind, 'cause there's a lot of itch on my mind. Ain't gonna take it away, I'm so gone, I'm flying. You know they would love to hate me, what goes on in my mind is too deep. Don't think you want it, just take it. Mama pray God, I hope my baby just make it. About to go hard, the truth is never mistaken. About to go hard, I'm about to go hard. See, I'm about to go. Came to conclusions that I've been on my way to find some healing. See, peace and unity is all I want within this earth. Gotta be awake to see what's going on. I see the hurt, all the lies.
Song, 1992, When One Child Dies. When one child dies, the other child dies, because they forget to let her live. To celebrate her life, not end it all in strife. Please don't let her be. She did survive, she did not die. Please don't let her be.
Green light.
When one child cries, we all wipe our eyes. Know that we care. Our love is there. Our empathy we share. When one child dies, the universe it cries. Embrace them all. No life is small. We're the human family. We reside on the same tree. It's clear to see. Finally, we've begun to think as one, to be as one.
I have such gratitude for every aspect of the HC program. The fact that this program values me more than my academic achievements even at times is incredible. And where else would that happen except for here? And what's interesting about that is that we can achieve so much more when first we are cared about as people and seen as individuals. And so now I'm crying right away. And I can't tell you how much I value that, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate feeling finally my intelligence and my value as a person with 5 concussions. This came to me just recently, and I had to read this to you. I am all about that we are one human family. It is the mission of what I'm about. I'm very deeply troubled by racism and bullying and violence, as we all are. So I want to share this. What most of us never realized, but persons of color have always known, is that the U.S. economy is far more similar to a game of chutes and ladders than Monopoly. It has long been a place where one's personal strategy for success and wealth building mattered far less than circumstance, or even the lucky or unlucky roll of the proverbial dice. One could begin to move up, climbing the ladder of the intergenerational advance, only to land on a downward slide that could, and often did, send you and your children back to the metaphorical beginning. For us, the game was always upward and onward, ladders without chutes. But for everyone else, the chutes predominated and were to be found around every turn. Coming to terms with a reality about which persons of color have long been aware, can't be easy. As a person of white privilege, I was just so struck by reading that, and I had to share this. When I talk about team empathy, this book would not have taken place if it weren't for mentors, interns, my students, my friends, my family. It wouldn't happen. I am really only the sum of my parts. I set out to write a book about empathy, shared humanity, that we are one human family. I wasn't writing a book about me, but when we write from what we know. And I wrote a character I didn't even know was me, and it was a superintendent friend of mine who said to me, he said, "Wendy, you're the cheetah." And I was horrified at first. I had to take personal inventory and admit that he was right. And then this is a beautiful story that happened when I was in Idaho. And I had just done a Barnes & Noble book signing, and I was talking to a Wendy's worker. I'm always talking about my book and trying to encourage people to understand the need for empathy. And I said, you know what? I said, there's some extra signed copies left next door if you wanted to have one, if you have children. And she said, what's your book? And I showed her the image on my phone, and she said, that's my child's favorite book. And I'm like, no, I said, are you serious? Okay, so, but here's the most beautiful part. So I'm already tearing up when she just says it's her child's favorite book. How special is that, of all the people I talk to? She says to me, she says, my child, Wendy, is severely autistic, and he has no friends. And she said, this book is so important to him. He has me read it every night to him. So as I was afraid of letting my world know about my vulnerabilities, here, without knowing it, those messages, those sort of organic messages that just happened that I didn't intend, help that child.
What reflective insights emerge from an autoethnographic study of creative storytelling and play in online teaching of elementary grade children? Gregory Bateson, in Theory of Play and Fantasy, relays human verbal communication can operate at many contrasting levels of abstraction. 1972, page 177. He explains that play can only happen if meta-communication occurs. That is explained as the exchanging signals which carry the message of play. Play is imperative for healthy development for humans, so to discover that the resemblance between the process of therapy and the phenomenon of it is in fact profound. In both play and therapy, the messages have a special and peculiar relationship to a more concrete or basic study. In addition, the teaching I have done based in play strengthened my brain due to the inherent cognitive and emotional nature of it, which I believe advanced my recovery. It had an incredible impact on it, but not with the thought of that. It happened inadvertently. I was serving, and I think when we serve, that's where positive outcomes happen. In Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain by Sharon Begley, 2006, the power of neuroplasticity to transform the emotional brain opens up new worlds of possibility. We are not stuck with the brain we were born with, but with the capacity to willfully direct which functions will flower and which will wither. which moral capacities emerge and which do not, which emotions flourish and which are stilled. When I consider the teaching of creative play, coupled with my nature meditative walks that were an adult version of play, it further relays and aligns with the findings in Begley 2006 work. Connections among neurons can be physically modified through mental training, just as biceps can be modified by physical training. For me, it was even playful to write in rhyme. And from there, prose emerged so I could learn and write in a higher education level. It was sort of a game for me in retrospect to write in rhyme, to write poetry. As a children's author and lyricist, my autoethnography will show through play, images, and words can advance understandings of empathy, especially for children. I tell how I did this with my son and how this led to replicating it in children's books, songs, and an online initiative. I show examples of how empathy can be related to kindness, connection to each other, and to the natural world through integration within creative play initiatives. It's shown to be a natural companion to an outcome of creative play. I have recognized that creative play is undervalued and not seen as legitimate by parents, teachers, and possibly some researchers in the context of K-6 education as a powerful tool for cognitive and emotional development. One wonders if the very definition itself betrays the value of play as legitimate in education. As a verb in Oxford Dictionary, play is defined as to engage in activity for enjoyment and recreation rather than serious or practical purpose. As a noun, it is activity engaged in for enjoyment and recreation. Researching the origin offers more aid in offering a more expansive capacity of play. For in an etymology online shares, the Old English version is flegan, P-L-E-G-A-N, or it's also spelled P-L-E-G-I-A-N. To move rapidly, occupy or busy oneself, exercise, frolic, make sport of, mock, perform music. It also was said to correlate to the modern German word fliegen, meaning to care. This better aligns with how Scales et al., 1991, positively termed play, that absorbing activity in which healthy young children participate with enthusiasm and abandon. Page 15. The emotional value of play is expressed in the Atlantic article called The Importance of Play by Bruno Bettelheim, 1987. Sharing, Freud noted how much and how well children express their thoughts and feelings through play. These are sometimes feelings that the child himself would remain ignorant of or overwhelmed by if he did not deal with them by acting them out in play. Since I used creative play as a descriptor in the research question for the purpose of the study, I would be remiss not to consider the definition more closely. If we consider the meaning of the word creative in the adjective and noun versions, one may surmise that there are more positive connotations as compared to the most current definitions of play, with a context of education or K-6 learning in mind. As an adjective, creative is relating to or involving the imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work. Or the noun version, which states, a person who is creative, typically in a professional context. I wonder then, if when we use them together, as opposed to dichotomous, can we elicit more legitimacy? Could the dissertation study help in that way? We may never know. I suppose there are arguments that creative types are not valued as intellects and go another direction to disprove creativity as a valued skill or being creative as less than. But that is for another study. An interesting study sought to find out the ways teachers looked at and valued play in a school context. And I don't know how to say this, pronounce it, so I'm going to say it. The name is PT and then HYVONEN in the Australian Journal of Teacher Education 2011, set out to study a school's use of play in Finland, of all places, where it is held in high regard. The study sought to determine how the 14 teachers in the study viewed and used play. A troubling but not surprising point was made in this article written this way. Paradoxically, although there have been many studies of children's play, few have specifically focused on play in education. Chang and Johnson, 2010, reviewed 4 educational and 4 developmental early childhood journals for 2005 to 2007. They found that only 57 articles out of 1,000 included the term play in the title, abstract, or keywords, and only 16 were primarily focused on play. Just 7 articles focused on play in education. Teachers need a new insight for play and learning, as merely increasing play possibilities in the classroom is not adequate for enhancing play and learning. By PUI-WAH and Stimson, 2004. In this dissertation, I am seeking to legitimize creative play in the context of K-6 education as a powerful tool for cognitive and emotional development through meaningful stories and songs. Again, PTHYVONEN 2011 relays that new insight is a necessity to relate to teachers' pedagogical knowledge to play-based teaching, something which is currently limited. They continue, teachers' pedagogical views about how they implement play are essential in this study context. I will demonstrate that through creative pursuits, play can be shown as valuable in K-6 education across disciplines. Its value, I believe, must be raised in our society. This is stated similarly too by Patrick Verrier in the book Enroll Teaching and Learning Dramatically. He sees social learning for children in what he calls dramatic playing, another way of terming play. He relays, through dramatic playing, children learn the following: to learn to accept the ideas of others, to develop interpersonal skills and a sense of group dynamics, to know how a group functions, to accept different learning styles, to identify with other people's lives, their concerns, and their problems at a personal, concrete level. Okay, this is one more thing from Patrick Verrier. This is a direct quote. The arts have a special role to play in human learning because they celebrate what we share in common while at the same time respecting our cultural differences. When he was talking about that, he was talking about it in terms of creative dramatics, in terms of dramatic playing, in terms of art as well in general. This is another good quote. These aims in drama acknowledge that students should always be encouraged to view themselves and their contributions to work in terms of the needs, interests, and concerns of the other participants. And again, that's Patrick Verrier. Reflective insights through narrative, how the pieces all fit together. Switching gears just a touch, journey to face that embrace my imperfection and debunk the myth of perfectionism. There is no perfection. This informed my teaching style, values, and content I would teach in Jelly Beans Creative Learning, through SissyMarySue, the next organization, through my books, and then through the teaching of my books, and through the online work that I did that serves as this study. Brené Brown is a scholar who has written books like Daring Greatly and Rising Strong. And within her books, she talks about people hustling for their worth. Perfectionism being a way to keep oneself so busy that they stay away from their vulnerability and who they are. This was an aha for me. I actually began this journey of this long before I realized. I made a choice to be an artist, to want to perform and not compete after having lettered in gymnastics. I chose ballet in late high school for this reason. I chose a peaceful way of being, a playful way. As a gymnast, the message of perfection had become too much to an adolescent girl who already had worldly messages about that in regard to myself and body. I had gotten so thin that coping with the pressure of competition felt too much to me too. This was nothing my coaches imposed. I struggled with anorexia early in high school. I was 87 pounds. This was a way to control my life. I felt powerless due to wishing I was back home in Alaska. I was given no say in having to move to Colorado with my mom. I did club gymnastics and lettered in gymnastics there. I was in Aurora, Colorado for 2 years, then moved back home with my dad, brothers, Dwayne and Paul, and stepmom. Classical ballet. I began ballet in high school. Surprisingly, in my first year of college, I was told that I had the talent to be a professional dancer in the New York dance world. This by a woman from New York. She came to watch me dance. She said, "You look 14. No one would know when you trained. You just can't talk. That way no one would know your age by hearing how you communicate." Me? Not talk? LOL. Not possible, I thought. Hide my intelligence, thinking, and mind? No way. What I knew intuitively was my grief emerged through the artistry of my dance. I let myself grieve through my body to the melancholy music of ballet. That is what she and my teacher were reacting to, I believe. I was honored by the compliment. Knowing the basis for what they recognized was feeling my grief, I did not choose to run off to New York to become a dancer as I was encouraged to do. I contemplated it though. This is what I concluded. B, I chose my voice over what seemed a vulnerable, voiceless life as a dancer. Sadly, I quit ballet, the only safe place to grieve I had found, when I took time away from college to help my family. This meant I chose to not let myself feel or grieve anymore. Dance, ironically, because it was voiceless, was where I had found it safe to do so. It felt an authentic, intimate space to be fully present to my own feelings. I wonder if my value for youth in play was retaining my education roots. I was influenced by the disparity in education for youth. Did I see this as a way to level a playing field? All kids learn best and are nurtured through play. Did I stand up for play due to the pressure of gymnastics that I saw as both good and with a dark side of perfectionism that diminished joy and fun? Did my mom's early playfulness impact me more than I realized? Did my sharing attitude and fairness for all impact Connor? Sandbox at the park. Your toys are for everyone when we are at the park, honey. I like that part. It's funny. Is what I always told my son. I took my son with me to inner city school where I had a lengthy project. It was a pretty tough school. It was an all year round school and a all day school to try to get the kids out of their stressful homes. It was a really tough community. It was really, really hard for these kids. So many of the children were sharing very violent stories with me about what they dealt with on a daily basis. And, I was really quite changed by this experience. And it really is what informs and motivates me to be a voice for these children that I came to care so deeply about and to love. My son, when he came with me, I remember the day that he came to the school and the woman who hired me said, "Why would you bring your son here?" And I thought, well, maybe it was a function of, why don't you have childcare for your son? But I don't think it was that. She was a white woman, and it was a rather intense school. It could be very violent in the hallways. Kids had so much pain inside. They were frustrated with, the hierarchical, punitive kinds of system that they were in that school setting and in so many school settings. So it was a very complex environment. However, I trusted my students. What happened next was not a surprise to me. So Connor came in. My son was a really shy young person, not like me, right? And that was how he was anywhere. In his own school in an affluent community, Edina, Minnesota, he communicated, and kids communicated with him oftentimes through his art. Since Connor was a good drawer, a lot of times kids would approach him about his art. And that helped Connor bridge his gap and helped him to socialize or to come outside of himself. This exact same thing, not surprisingly, happened in that classroom. And also, just something that was so pointed, it was such an example that I already believed in, but it just was playing out in a way that I've just never forgotten. I believe that racism's taught, and children just know how to love and be empathetic and kind and connect naturally, unless their views are corrupted. And that day, when Connor came in, the kids sensed that he was a shy child. The particular class I was working with that day were, I think, first graders, about his age. I think they were his same age. And a group of kids put their little desks around Connor because they could see that he was a shy person. Not that he was a white boy. They saw he was a shy person. He was a shy kid. And that was what they responded to. They did that with him to help him feel a part of things. Then they started talking to him about his drawing. And I was so struck by that. And I've contemplated that at other times in my life. And the other thing that I did notice that day, the kids were even more gentle in that classroom on that day. And what I'm wondering about, and I don't know if I'll ever know the answer to this, but I'm wondering if my students felt me value them by sharing my son, taking my students on like they were my children. You know, they're part of me and part of us. And so, you know, it was so stunning to watch Connor and my students be in such harmony and love and peace with one another. I mean, again, I wasn't surprised. It was in stark contrast to the person who hired me. Why would you bring your son here? Because there were implications with how she said that. You know, I just felt like it was important for me to share them with Connor. Teaching inner city and diverse schools, this was a huge influence on my life. And I believe it is why I have the kind of social justice heart that I do, for wanting to probably be a voice for what felt like voiceless children, because as children, they don't have a say in the schools they're in the kind of instruction they get, in the opportunities they have in a school context. And I was really deeply troubled by that. I did not see a level playing field when I saw this up close, and it never left me. And I really think that it's a part of why I feel strongly about being that voice. Now, in all settings, I used creative play for learning. Even at a high school level, I did that. So I really worked hard to build relationships and let them feel. I think I was able to let them feel through the format I used in my teaching. Something that kids would want to be a part of, so that they could feel the joy in learning and just feel their value.